Everyone wants to have 1 million followers and have 100 brands. They're not really looking at numbers anymore. Like, it's not about that. Brands are now tapping into people's stories. They're looking for people who have that kind of authentic engagement. If you can sell yourself and you can sell your story and you can say to the brand, I think once you unlock that, that's where the power becomes. When you're struggling to do content or create content, then you're probably not doing the right thing. People are looking at a piece of content and it's like,
Dean
yes,
Horwitz,
that's it.
Dean Horwitz, thank you for coming on the podcast. We really appreciate it.
It's interesting to be in this position.
In the hot seat.
In the hot seat. I think this actually might be my first podcast that I've been a guest on.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
How many episodes did you say you've done so far?
Probably around about 80 in 2.5 years, 2 years. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's incredible. That's a lot. We're just getting started. We're babies in the podcast space. 5 episodes.
That is episode 6 now. If you're listening,
episode 6.
Incredible.
So we're very much babies in the podcast space. We're filmmakers, so we know how to shoot a podcast, but actually doing the podcast, very new. So it's cool to be joined by someone who's a seasoned vet in the podcast space.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's not really any, it's kind of just learning as you go. And I think even with, like I can obviously tell you things, but it's like you've got to learn about, your own podcast and your own, like the what topics work, what don't.
Yeah.
So that's always also the thing. It's like just start because, like you literally don't know what's gonna take off. Like I think that was the biggest thing for me was like I went in very clear with an idea of what my podcast was going to be. And I held on to that idea. I actually held on to it until the end of last year. But I knew the whole time that wasn't like what the audience was tuning in for, or what they wanted. And so that's kind of the thing is just get started and then you figure it out as you kind of go.
Yeah, I mean, for us, to give you some context, if you haven't dived deep into our Instagram, we're trying to help athletes make a living off of social media. Like, okay, if you're a trail runner, if you're a triathlete, if you're a high rocks athlete or whatever, and it's your passion, but you don't have like enough time to be as good as you want to be. Maybe you've working a 9 to 5 and you want to go pro. How do you get sponsors? How do you make your social media a platform that actually aids your career? And like, what does that look like practically? So it's kind of like social media meets athleticism, sports, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And you're doing quite well. 10,000 followers on your personal page, I think. 5,000 on the podcast.
Yeah.
And then you've also, is it a recent YDRun Instagram page?
So because I don't have enough going on, I decided to start a 365 project also in 2024, where I phoned a different person every day and asked them why they run. And again, as I've said, like you never know what it's going to turn into. And I kind of realized that I really enjoyed it. I've really found it fascinating. It's very much like a mini podcast type of thing, very, very mini. And then I've just turned it into its own thing now. And it's kind of running away from me. Like I had someone now message me now and they're like, hey, we're from like Edgemead Runners Club. Like, can you come to Edgemead next week? I'm like, okay.
That's epic.
Like, what day must I be there type thing.
That's cool.
Awesome.
Would you give our viewers and us some background on who you are, what brought you to today, how did you get into trail running and running in general, and then how did you transition into like social media? Like how did you give me the progression, give us some background?
Yeah, so I mean, I actually went the other way. I went from social media and then social media in the sport field. So I've been working in social media for 15 years. Wow. Since 2009. It was a cool time because it was like no one really knew what was going on. So it was just like, apparently we need a Facebook page, and I was like, okay, I can do that. So I've been in that space for 15 years, and I think the nice thing for me is that it's always kind of just followed my passions. So about 10 years ago, I started like a food Instagram account, and then I spent 5 years in the food space, and then I got over that. And then during COVID, was quite big into the gym, like going to gym. And during COVID, I was at home, obviously, and my coach was like, cool, we're doing Zoom sessions now. And I was like, not a chance. Like, I'm not like doing gym like over Zoom, compared to going into a gym, it just was not the same. And I was like, cool, what can I do? And I was like, okay, I don't really know anything, but I'm going to do running. And I started running in my in my flat in the basement garage. And then they banned me from doing that because I was spreading my sweat and my
Wow.
germs and stuff.
Oh yeah. it's
So
not
then I
being
started,
healthy.
then I started running in the stairwell, and they banned me from doing that. And then obviously we went down, whatever it was, to level 2, where it was like, cool, everyone can go exercise on the promenade for 30 minutes at the same time. And yeah, so that's kind of like how I got into running. And I think for me, it was amazing because I had a whole year, I think it was, it was very lonely, like doing it myself, but also I was able to kind of develop myself. There was no one to compete with. There were no races. There was no, none of this. Where at the moment, obviously, if you're getting into running, it's like you need to do a race. You need to do, and then like coming out of COVID, I found and I think I still find with road running, I find that unless you're really fast, it's not really that fun. For myself personally, like I find that like, being slow and being at the back of like a road race or a road group is it's soul destroying. And I got to a point where I was like, I absolutely love running and I love what it's doing for me. And I love the sport and the community was growing, but I can't do the road thing anymore. And I was just like, there has to be something else. And I always find it quite interesting because this was, like maybe 2023, 2022. And like there was none of what exists today. There were no trail running groups. I mean, there were probably those like old school groups, but like there were no trail running groups. Like no one like was talking about it on social media. So it very much was like find your own path. And I basically then I was like, cool, I'm going to do this. And I just did for a year, I just did the Lions Loop like pretty much every day in road shoes and just trying to learn as much as I could. And that's kind of where the passion for it started.
That's epic.
Dude, that is so funny because the Lion's Head Loop was literally also my first route starting trail running.
Yeah, it's rare. I mean, if you live on that side of the mountain, it's a great option. But yeah, and then I think, that was 2023. And this is going back to what I was saying earlier, I was like, trail running is so amazing. Like, I'm really loving it. And it's such a great thing. People don't need to be like road runners first and then trail runners. And I was like, but I found it really hard to get into it because of, like all the technicalities, all the things you have to learn. So I'm going to start a podcast to help people get into trail running. And then basically what happened was the boom hit, which was great for the podcast, but not so great for the subject of the podcast because it was like everyone was now learning and going to beginner groups and all these trail running groups were popping up. So it was like, okay, well, you don't really need the podcast now to learn how to get into trail running. It's so accessible.
Right. So you were like very niche and an authority in the space. And then as other authorities started to pop up, the audience kind of spread out a little bit, would you say?
Yeah. And I think also like, I mean, when I started it, my kind of idea was that it would help people, but if you think about it logically now, like it doesn't really seem like the place you would learn about trail running would be on a podcast. Because it's kind of like you actually have to learn while you're doing it. And so it's, like I had episodes on shoes and gear and things like that, but it's like you actually want to see the gear, you want to feel the gear, you want to go into store, things like that. So thinking back on it now, it's like probably like it wasn't the best idea to do, but yeah, I think it was a good start.
Well, you gotta just start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
You're not gonna have it all figured out, and we're also learning. We don't know what we're doing. We're just trying to figure it out as we go,
Yeah.
So I'm sure we'll look back at many decisions we made and
Yes.
think like that was stupid,
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody tells you, they exactly know what they have to do to get to this point. They're like, They don't know what they're talking about, honestly.
Yeah, I think the big thing is like with, you know, and I was thinking about this and thinking about, you know, your guys' topic and stuff. I think the big thing is like, and it's like probably sounds cliche, but the big thing is authenticity, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and it's I think a few years ago you could probably get away with not being authentic because like there wasn't so many people on social media, but like now it's like in order to stand out, you've got to be authentic, you've got to be true to yourself. And I think a lot of people, you know, want to be something else, and that you get that fatigue after a while. And I think that the beauty of social media is that you'll find a community for whatever you're, you know, whatever you're doing, whatever your angle is, or, you know, and that for me is kind of become the most, you know, even with the podcast, I was like, why am I doing this because I think it'll be a good idea to help people get into the sport, or am I doing this because I'm actually passionate about the topic?
Right.
I think that was also like quite an important thing, you know, is that they say in the podcasting world, like if you can't think of your first 100 episodes, then you probably shouldn't start your podcast. So I don't know how you guys are doing on that.
Hey, I mean, like our like strategy is more, we're not authorities in the space yet.
Yeah.
But we want to bring people who are more authorities on the space to give our viewers value.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, we also want to learn.
Yeah.
The way we started this podcast is me and Giannis were, you know, we're both filmmakers. We film for other people who are successful in the social media space. And we want a piece of that action. Like, how are you doing this actually? Because it seems elusive sometimes. It's like, how are you actually making a living off of social media? You know, I think Giannis, you can shed more light on it, but you were working for some influencers in Germany who were making like a lot of money off of like posting some reels, and he was making like incredible content, a lot of overhead cost for cameras and flights and all this stuff. He was making less than these guys who were just, you know, running with their abs out, you know. Tell us more about that experience.
Yeah, I mean, it was basically for the Berlin Marathon weekend, which is arguably one of the biggest weekends in the whole world. And we were like shooting something for like a brand, like a huge European supplement, a protein distributor. And the thing is, we also knew like of the whole campaign, the whole weekend campaign. It was us obviously creating some content for the brand specifically, not about a person, but more about the whole like event itself. And then they also used certain influencers to create content like in the influencer style, like UGC content that they post on their own pages as well about the event. And the budget comparing for like the UGC, for the influencer, and for the production company was hugely different.
No, I can imagine.
The influencer's budget was, I would say, 4 or 5 times higher.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, in the first sense, it looks like it doesn't make sense. The production quality is not even the same. But in the end, it's all about, like you said, like you having a community, you have people that listen to you because you build authority. And I feel like that's also in the podcast format. It's way harder to hide that than on Instagram.
Exactly.
Is that also maybe a reason why you said you necessarily chose podcast as a format? Because like you said, now looking back, choosing a podcast might have not been the best scenario for yourself.
Yeah. So that's also an interesting one. I think it's also like it was kind of the kind of combining of the two passions that I had. I started out probably like 16, 17 years ago at UCT on the UCT radio, and that was like a big passion of mine. And obviously at that time it was like there were no podcasts, there was nothing like, so it was like radio or nothing. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to do that. So then I went into social media, and I think I was just waiting for that like right time to get back into the space when it was like a lot more accessible, because I'm not as lucky as you guys with my technical abilities. So it kind of seemed that was the right time. It seemed like the technology was getting a lot easier, and it was a lot easier to put a podcast together yourself without kind of huge technical knowledge. So it was kind of like that combining of I think also for a long time, and I don't know if you guys had this where you're like, we really want to start a podcast, and you spend like a year like this idea, that idea, this idea, So there was a lot of that, and if if I think back, like I came up with some of like these crazy concepts and like I'm gonna do this thing and that thing, and then I was just like, you know what, like what's the most simple thing I can do to get this thing off the ground? And like trail running, let's do it. You know, I can think of the topics easily, I can think of the guests easily, and then it was just like from there, it was just.
So do you do topics and guests? So do you ever sit by yourself and like talk through different things, or sit with like a friend and talk through like gear or any of these other things that you were sharing with us earlier?
Yeah, so and I think like also very basically what happened was we got quite lucky in that our first episode was with Ryan Sands. Like we managed to get him on as like our first guest. And I think immediately then, like from that first episode, it was like, okay, this is like, you know, it's not going to, it shouldn't be a topic driven show, although I still pursued with it. And I think one of the big, you know, if people are going into podcasting, I think there's a fine balance as well between your passions and your topics and who your guests are, because it's very easy to be like, okay, cool, who's got the most social media followers on this topic and get them on, but like, are they actually, you know, going to give you a good podcast? So you've got to kind of walk that line as well of like, you know, is this going to be an interesting podcast to listen to, regardless of the numbers? But if you can get that right, it pays off, because everyone kind of wants to share the podcast of themselves. So that was definitely a way that we kind of grew in the beginning. Was we kind of found, so we were obviously on that education space, so we kind of found guests who had the education, but then also had the kind of the presence online, who would kind of share the podcast and spread it. So I think that's important, you know, is that you don't go and, you know, I did once or twice go too far to the one side, and I learned my lessons. And, you know, I think it's a very fine balance that you've got to kind of play.
Which side did you go
So
too far to?
I think I did 2 episodes with like road runners.
Yeah.
And I thought like, you know, like their online personalities, like people would be interested in them, and it was just like, nope. Like, you know, it was like, this is a trail running podcast and we're listening to trail running. We don't really want to listen to what road runners have to kind of say, you know. And I think, you know, like they're not celebrities in the trail running space, you know. So that was what I learned quite quickly, is that once you pick your niche, then you kind of got to stick to it. It's like, you can't, you know, or once you've built an audience, that's also very important.
Yeah, it's difficult. I think for us, like, we're trying to have on like really cool athletes that are like inspiring and that people look up to, and then we're also trying to have on people who know a little bit about social media.
Yeah.
Our ideal guest is like someone right in the middle that does both. But sometimes you're someone who knows a lot about running and you don't have a big social media, and sometimes you have someone who has like a big social media, but it's not really in the fitness space.
Yeah.
We have one guest coming on, hopefully sometime soon in the future, maybe next week. Big following, but not in the fitness space. So we just need some like tips on, okay, social media, how do you actually do this? So it's a fine line, trying to balance that and try and give people some value.
Yeah.
And they can still apply it to maybe their fitness pages and stuff.
Yeah.
But not also straying too far from the original core idea of what the podcast is.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is, like, social media is social media at the end of the day. Like, I don't think there's, and that's why I've said, like, it's kind of followed me. So for the last, I guess, 3 or 4 years, I've kind of been in the, I guess, like fitness, athletic kind of space, even though I'm a very weekend warrior, as you call it, in terms of trail running. But I think it's, you know, it's all kind of the same principles, where, you know, I think everyone's trying to look at how they can kind of stand out in social media, but the one thing that actually makes you stand out is the thing you're not using, you know, where people are like, okay, I'm not gonna be authentic. I'm just going to follow trends. But literally the only thing that makes you unique is that one thing. And it's like, tap into that. The beauty of it, as I was saying, is that like, how many people are online? Like, it's impossible that you're not going to find your community.
Yeah.
So I think that was also like quite an important thing, is that, you know, go with your passions, and then you'll find people who, you know, I think that was the most important thing for me, is that if you can't sustain something yourself, like, you're not gonna, and not even from a, you know, from a, like, people can see when it's inauthentic, but just from a day-to-day perspective, you know, I think that was the same with me. You know, it got to a point where I was working in food social media, and I was just like, I no longer have passion for this.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you know, and my numbers, you know, my engagement, my numbers, like everything just spiral downwards, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the most important thing, is just, you know, to build that community. And, you know, I think if you're going to go kind of the organic route and try and build a proper community, you know, you need to find something that people resonate with. And it, you know, in order to do that, you need to find something that you resonate with, because you're kind of, you know, you're the leader of the community.
Yeah.
You know, so I think for me, you know, my building the trail running community, you know, I think that was like, cool, we're gonna talk about trail running, and you follow this page for trail running. And, you know, I think also the other thing is, you've almost got to go as niche as possible if you're going into like the athletic space.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to be like, cool, I'm going to be a, you know, personal trainer, but I'm going to focus on, you know, like just lifting weights or something like that, or like just like female health or men's health, you know, type of thing. Because it's also like, to go too general, you struggle. So like, even with me with the trail running, you know, it was like, I got to a point where I was like, cool, I'm like there's 2 trail running podcasts in South Africa. And I got to a point where I'm like, we're basically the voice of the trail running community. So therefore, every single thing that happens in the community, we've got to cover.
Yeah.
So I basically like burned myself up, because I was like at 3 or 4 races every weekend, and then like, you know, like interviewing trail runners, and then educating people, and, you know, trying to cover the whole community. And I was just like, no, like, I don't need to do certain things. There's other people doing it, maybe not in the podcast space.
Yeah.
And I think that's also something that's super interesting, is that there are others that are doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that, you said you got into running during COVID? You think that's the big explosion with running in, say, Cape Town and the world, is people started running during COVID and then just kept running? Is that, do you
Yeah.
think that's the big
And
factor?
I think we learned the value of being outside as well. I think a lot of people probably didn't spend a lot of time in their houses to such an extent. And obviously it was a huge health thing as well, you know.
Yeah.
Like, I think it was a big wake up call on health. In terms of trail running, I think it's just become an accessibility thing, you know, where you can finally see, like, as you were saying, you know, it doesn't look that scary. You know, like, so many people are doing it, it can't be that scary, so I can go and kind of join it. But I think a lot of these communities have just been amazing that have popped up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, you said earlier a bit about the niche topic, and then if you go just into the running perspective, trail running is probably one of the more niches in the running space, in the sports fitness space. I mean, you also earlier said that you're thinking about shifting a bit more into the road running. What do you think is the big difference between road running and trail running, specifically when it comes to that? I feel like trail running is still a bit more niche and a bit more exclusive in a sense.
Yeah. I think it's just the accessibility, you know, and I think you've got to be pretty committed to getting into trail running in the beginning. As I was saying, like, a lot of the groups, you know, they say they cater for beginners, but, you know, like, the people that are leading the groups, you know, are often very much like a beginner and like actual beginner. The difference is quite vast. And as I was saying before, you know, I think even with a fast road running group, you know, you can maybe hold on for 5Ks, or alternatively, you're all going to be done in 40 minutes. Whereas you can do a 5K trail and you know, like the fastest person can take like 30, 35 minutes and the slowest person can take over an hour, you know, and then you get back and there's no one's waiting for you. So I think that's kind of like the big thing with trail running. And I think that's what's sort of made it so niche, is that road running is so accessible and so easy to get into. And trail running, it's just a little bit more tougher and you've got to be committed to it. Yeah.
There's normally more gear, right? Like
Yeah.
you need your hats and water packs and all kinds of gels and nutrition.
I think that's also more when you like, I mean, that's also a recent spike of the ultras. I mean, trail running, I feel like also right now, speaking of trail running, are automatically connected it to like running 50K, running 100K.
Yeah.
But I mean, basically trail running is supposed to be just as the same distance as road running, or am I wrong?
I think that's also the thing, is that like it's getting to a point now where like, it's become normalized, like in the trail community, you know, like 100K is normal, or like that's, you know, like I think if you look at the road community, like Comrades is like the pinnacle for road in South Africa. Whereas like on the trail side, like I have a friend who just did a 300-mile race, like
300 miles.
Yeah, through the Karoo.
Oh my gosh.
And it was like 47 degrees each day, like, you know. So like that's, you know, that's the kind of level that you're seeing these people are doing that type of thing, and you're seeing so many people doing it. I mean, not so many, but like, you know, like
it's more than one.
Yeah, it's more than one
guy.
Crazy person, you know. So you're like, okay, well, that's where I need to be. You know, that's the goal. And it's like, no, that's not really.
That's not really how it works.
Yeah.
No, it's the same in like there's this term online, gymflation.
Yeah.
It's kind of talk about bodybuilders, how like early 2000s a good physique looked like X.
Yeah.
And then now you look at that guy and people online will be like, oh, what a beginner, such a noob, you know. And like everybody needs to be on steroids now and stuff. And I feel like it's the same thing with like runflation or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like you could just go and do a 5K. And I was like, oh, 5K is just, it's nothing. It's basically like a walk.
Yeah.
Anything under 15Ks is like considered
a short run.
Yeah, a short run.
Yeah.
Easy, like easy 20 this morning. Easy half marathon,
Yeah.
you know? And like half marathon is like a big goal for a lot of people, you know?
I think that's actually a good point, and especially on the social media side, you know, like people think that doing insane feats on social media, like doing a 300 mile. This guy does it because he loves it. I don't like his social media is terrible. I keep trying to get him to, because he does multiple 100 milers and 200 milers a year. Like he goes on these crazy adventures, but his social media he's not that great with the social media. But I think that's also the thing, is that like we've kind of associated social media with you need to be doing insane things or like outlandish things. Whereas like, you know, you can be just as inspiring by just getting off your couch and doing a 2K if you've never run before.
Yeah.
You know, so you don't have to be doing crazy things to inspire people.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's the thing, is like you kind of think, well, I just have to keep pushing it. But that's not really the case, you know, because I think your audience can also shift, you know, where you can maybe have a beginner audience, or you can have a 100K audience, you know, that you could be inspiring. And I think if you like start out as a beginner, if you're like, okay, I'm going to start running, and you become a run, you know, and you're like, I'm going to start running on social media. And then you start as a beginner, you build up an audience, and then you're suddenly now doing, you know, like 100Ks, or you're doing Comrades or things like that. Potentially you've probably lost your audience, you know? And I think that then becomes the problem, is that you're no longer inspiring to those people because they're kind of still like stuck on the couch, getting off the couch, getting on the couch. So it's a difficult one with your niche and where you're kind of going and what you're trying to do. And that goes back to the thing of, you know, it shouldn't be about the distance. It should be about your personal journey.
Yeah.
And if you decide, you know what, I'm just going to be a 5 or a 10K specialist, but I'm going to literally improve my 5K time every single time, or I'm going to go for like my 10K PBs and I'm just going to do 10K races. That's still incredibly inspiring to see someone who's gone from like walking a 10K to like 10K in like 30, 40 minutes, you know? Yeah. So I think that's also the thing, is there's different levels of inspiration.
Yeah.
And people then are like, you need to find what works for you. Yeah. And I think that's so important, you know, is that brands are now tapping into people's stories, and they're looking for people who have that kind of authentic engagement. And I think a lot of people, you know, are like, cool, I need to build a social media audience as quickly as possible so that I can get brand deals. But the brands are now looking for these kind of authentic, engaging stories. They're not really looking at numbers anymore. Like, it's not about that. It's you know, it's no longer about having, there's so many people that have huge followings. Like, it's I don't see it being about the numbers at all anymore. Like that for me is like, I think if you're authentic and you're engaging and you've got an audience of any size, you know, the brands will be interested in you because you're going to grow, like you're a good investment. And also because you've got a community, you've got people who actually are inspired by you,
yeah,
and are actually listening to what you're, you know, like what you're using and what products you're putting on there. So that's always the difficult thing, is like everyone wants, you know, to have 1 million followers and have 100,000, like 100 brands,
yeah,
all of, like, but then you're basically like, if you look at that from the outside, it's like, who, you know, what are you actually doing? Like,
you're just an ad agency.
Exactly. You know, you're a billboard. That's essentially it.
No
so
substance.
let's get into like the business side of things.
Yeah.
Okay. So you talk about audience and stuff. If we're like talking to athletes in Cape Town or South Africa,
Yeah,
and they have a small audience, like, how do they actually start, say, earning some money off of their sport so that they can put that back into themselves as athletes? Like, what are the like steps? How do you go about securing a brand deal or a sponsorship, or like, obviously you're talking about being authentic and engaging and stuff, but then from the business side of things, like, how does that work? You've been in social media for so long. I'm sure you have a good intro into that.
Yeah, I think for me, it's, you know, like, these brands are getting so many pitches and so many people like reaching out to them. So you've got to really stand out. I think, you know, like, you know, if you're getting a pitch and someone's like starting the pitch with, I've got 100,000 followers, like, it's not gonna, you know, no brand's gonna kind of sell that. No brand's gonna buy that, you know? And I think that's also, it's quite a difficult one, because it's almost like you've got to build a bit of a presence first before you've, you know, and you're almost selling your story to the brand. You know, you're like, what you've got to do is you've got to tell the brand, you know, like, why you want to invest in me versus someone else. And I think it was quite interesting. I bumped into a woman who works for a brand the other day, and, you know, she was like, everyone wants to be a part of the brand, but you go to their social media and they're not wearing the brand in any of their, you know? So like, if you send a proposal to a brand, like, they're going to literally go to your social media and be like, okay, this guy's not wearing any of our clothes, like, or any of our shoes or anything like that. It's like, why would we even work with this person? So I think that's also the key, is that, you know, like, you've got to kind of invest a little bit in yourself and in like building that brand for yourself before you can kind of, you know, start getting the sponsored deals. And I don't think it's a numbers game at all. You know, I think it's a stories thing, and I think, you know, it's authenticity thing. And if you can sell yourself and you can sell your story and you can say to the brand, this is why you should back me, I think you're gonna have a lot more chance than just kind of trying to grow your numbers as quickly as possible.
You said multiple times now, especially also in your bio says storytelling, and I feel like you always said like the one key identifier how you can stick out in like a crowded market is your story.
Yeah.
Would you say storytelling is a superpower? And is there also certain ways, because I feel like there's a misconception that people feel like either you are born a natural storyteller or not, but I feel like there is certain skills and tools you can learn to become a better storyteller.
Yeah, I think, and going back to the what you're talking about with the Berlin Marathon, I find, and this was a big problem that I had for a long time, is like, being in social media for so long, I've become a bit of a perfectionist, and I struggled for a long time with my personal social media to actually like post stuff, because I was like, this needs to be perfect, because I've been working with brands where, it needs to go through 3, 4, 5 reviews. And so, and I think now what's basically happening is that people are looking at a piece of content and it's like, is it interesting? Is it engaging? Is it funny? And can I see myself in that position? They're not looking at the quality anymore. And I think, yes, you can learn to be a better storyteller, but it's also, I think the thing is to just start. That's also the thing, the best way to become a better storyteller is to refine your story. And you've got to start somewhere. That's the thing. It's like, and I think the biggest thing for me is, set up a camera, tell your story, and post it. Like, don't think about it,
Yeah.
Like, do that. Like, no scripting, no, like, I think that's been the biggest lesson, is that, like, if you can do that, like, don't edit it, don't like script it, don't, put it in CapCut and cut the ums and the ahs and like things like that. If you can just record something and post it, from there it kind of snowballs. But I think, like I was chatting to a friend the other day, and I was like, like, you've got things to say. She's like, well, no one's going to want to listen to me. Like, no one's going to, and I think that's a big thing is that we suffer from, is that, like, and I see this with my YDRun project, like, go up to people and they're like, I don't have an interesting story, like, I don't have the, like, oh, I survived cancer, or I lost my parents at a young age, so, and my dad was a runner, like things like that. And I think that's where we've kind of fallen short as a society, is that we're like, everyone's chasing that now. Like, if you don't have the story, you don't have a story. So I think we kind of have to redefine the narrative around what a story is, and who gets to tell them as well. I think that's important. Like, is everyone has a story, there's this, that's what makes you, and you've just got to find the people that identify with that, and find your angle, find your hooks, that's also the thing.
Yeah, it's inspiring. I think Yanis and I were trying to make podcasts. We also are storytellers in the way we're filmmakers, but we're not good at building brands necessarily on social media. We're like super new to that, and I think we have been thinking, oh, we need to do more stories. We need to tell our story as Daniel and Yanis, which we haven't really been doing. We've been like focused on the guests. Who are we? Nobody cares about us, sort of thing. But I think we need to lean more into our personal brands and our personal stories.
I mean, look, like, viral clips are only going to get you so far as well. That's the thing. It's like, like, it's, and the other thing I've learned is that you've got to, and this is also why podcasting is so hard, is you've got to treat each channel as its own. I think social media, to an extent, you can maybe get away with posting similar things like Instagram and TikTok, but like, if you look at your numbers, it's like very few people kind of follow through to to YouTube, or to definitely to Spotify. So your click-through rates are not huge. So you got to then almost be like, okay, well, I've got a social media audience. Well, I'm building a social media audience, but I'm also building a YouTube audience. And it's like, you've got to look at it in that way. Because I think a lot of people look at it as, oh, like, someone's going to follow me on every channel, and you're telling, you're like, if I've never heard of you and I'm only on Instagram, am I getting the full story? That's the, and like, I'm not on TikTok. So it's like, I'm not going to go look at your TikTok and see, what you're doing. Or I'm not going to watch an hour-long podcast of you guys, So it's like, that also becomes important, is that you've got to treat each channel and each space as kind of separate. You'll have overlap here and there, but it's that, especially when you're starting out, that's so important.
To build a complete brand on each platform, and not just fragmented across the
Yeah,
platforms.
or even just start, you know, with, I think that was the other thing with me is that like, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to focus on Instagram. Like that's where I see the audience is.
Yeah.
That's where, you know, like I find that, you know, podcast content is like on TikTok, it's like too short and you have to have certain angles. And, you know, so I found that Instagram works best for podcast content. But, you know, and I think you've just got to find that space, you know, like where you guys are most comfortable with, and build that audience. That's the, you know, I think that's the most important thing is you've got to find people that relate to you. And, you know, as much as you say it is about your guests, you know, like, you know, why would I want to listen to you talking to your guests? You know,
Right.
it's like, what is your story? You know, why would I want to watch you interviewing like an athlete versus anyone else interviewing an athlete?
Right.
You know, what unique perspective are you bringing to that conversation as well? You know, and I think also as podcast hosts, we kind of do shrink ourselves a lot. You know, we kind of like, even when you were saying, you know, like, oh, we don't have any expertise, we're just like here to, you know, like ask them questions. And then immediately you put yourself on the back foot because then you're like, okay, well, what am I going to ask this guy? Let me just get like 10 standard questions of asking them stuff, you know? And then rather than coming from your own kind of perspective.
Yeah.
Which is something I learned, as I said, with Ryan Sands, where I watched that episode back now and I'm like, literally, you could read his book and you'll find out all the same things you found out in the podcast. And that's not Ryan's fault. Because I mean, he's told his whole life that's my fault for not actually, you know, getting him to tell other stories or getting him to feel comfortable where he opens up about other things or, you know, going in that direction.
Right.
So that's also very important to do. Yeah, I think, you know, like it's you've got to find your own community as well. You know, you can't, because if you think about how you're doing it, you know, for me it was a lot easier where Ryan Sands would share something and he has a trail running audience and it'll be like, cool, that's it. I want to follow a trail running podcast, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, whereas you guys is obviously in a different space where, you know, you're in a bit more of a general space. So you've got to then find that unique angle. And I think that becomes a lot easier because you have a lot bigger audience potential, but it also becomes a lot harder because, you know, it's like when someone sees you on like a guy who's a runner's page, you know, and then follows you, but then you've got like a rugby player, you know, then they're like, so then you've got to find that kind of one unique thing, as you say, like that this is the angle that we're taking and this is the topic that we're covering, that people can immediately identify. You know, yes, you're interviewing a range of different people, but you're interviewing them about the moment their life changed or the one business decision that they make that, like, you know, that took them to the next level type thing. I think that's very important.
I feel like that's also actually ties perfectly into why I said sometimes going viral is not the thing you actually want to happen. Because let's say you are a trail runner, but then you do like a trail running versus road running video comparison, and that goes totally viral, but it's more because it upsets all the road runners or trail runners, vice versa. And then a bunch of road runners follow you from this reel, and then you're only posting trail running content and they're just like not engaging. So now actually your other content is performing even worse.
Yeah. I think also the thing with social media is you're only as good as your last post as well, which is something also to consider. You know, so if you're okay, we're gonna go the viral route, you're gonna have to be producing viral videos every time, and you're gonna become known as that person. You know, so people like, as I was saying before, it's like people like, okay, are you entertaining me? Are like, is this like a funny thing? You know, am I learning from you? You know, am I being inspired? So it's like and I think people have those, you know, maybe they don't do it on purpose, but they have those kind of things where it's like, oh, okay, I feel like being entertained today, so I'm going to go to this person, you know?
Yeah.
And it's very easy to kind of fall into that space, you know? So I think that's also important is you like, you know, and the problem is it's like, do you want instant success? like hit success, or do you want a long-term, like a long-term kind of community or partnership or
Right.
or business? That's also something that's very important when you're talking about like athletes and sponsorship and things like that. Why are you doing this? Like, are you doing this just to make money? Like, or is this like a career that you want to have, or are
Yeah.
you doing this because you believe in yourself so much about your potential that you're not willing to give that up,
Yeah.
And I think that's important because anyone can make money easily and quickly, and like there's so many formulas
Yeah.
and courses and
Join the WhatsApp
yeah
group now.
yeah exactly, like this hook and that hook and follow the trends, and it's so easy to do all of that stuff, but it's like, do you want to do this for a long time, or do you want to build something,
Yeah.
or like, and I think once you unlock that, like that's where the power becomes. Like that's where when you kind of step out of yourself and say, I want to build something that other people can benefit as well.
Yeah. I think like big thing for us specifically, like just talking for myself, I'm not going to put words in Giannis's mouth, but I think we do share the vision, is so many people really have amazing passions that they do on the side, but they're stuck in a position where they can't leave their full-time job. And we both amateur athletes, like we're filmmakers, creators professionally, but we would love to do our passions and our professions like simultaneously. Like, how do you bring that together? And we see other people bring it together, telling interesting stories, doing cool stuff, and we're like, we would love to learn how to do that. And we'd also like to bring other people along to be able to experience their passions. And maybe even if you're not an athlete, if you're like, you crochet or something like that, you can still learn something from the podcast. So, okay, I can turn my passion into my profession. And I feel like it's so liberating to have like an avenue to do that. And social media is so powerful. You see so many people just being able to live out their dreams by making interesting content, telling their stories. And I think if we were just after money, I think there'd be other things other than a podcast we'd be doing. But I think the cool thing about this is we're sharing the information with other people.
Yeah.
We're not just, learning for ourselves and keeping it to ourselves,
So what are your guys' passions?
I love road running. I love lifting, and high rocks is something I'm just starting to get into. And then I love storytelling, and I think that's why social media is such a big thing for me. It's like I can bring these things together. Also, my big thing is people. I love people. I love talking to people, business. Just like getting into like the technical sides of like the business, and like how do sponsorships work, and how does growth work on Instagram, marketing, all these things. Like, how do you tell stories? How do you reach people? What are people interested in? Like the human psychology behind it as well. Like these sort of things are things that like light me up. And Giannis, like, I don't know.
I mean, basically everything endurance sports.
Yeah.
I mean, started actually not just with running, directly dove into triathlons.
Yeah.
Now finding the love for trail running. I mean, I'm mainly staying in Europe, which especially in Berlin, which is flat as it gets. So trail running is mostly an option if I'm down here in South Africa. But anything endurance sports, and I mean, for me, it was always like I was always playing sports when I was younger. Did some play professionally in a young age, basketball, even though I'm quite short. So sports was always the main thing in my life. And then I found this creative outlet through filmmaking, and also started building like a creative agency where we also did a lot with social media, obviously, and a lot of like filmmaking, content creation, and found actually having this balance in between like sports, the creative outlet, like work, play, is really something that I enjoy. And also seeing, obviously, from the professional side that people actually can make a living out of it.
Yeah.
I feel like a misconception, though, is also, I mean, maybe we can speak about that too, is that people think being a creator is just bliss and it's just easy. Because to be clear, I mean, we have a good friend that they basically makes a living out of social media, has a huge following, but every time you ask her, hey, you want to do something there, you want to hang out there, like, no, mainly she's working. There's so much to do. And if you believe you can do social media and just breeze off, like money will come in without actually working, I feel like that's also one thing you have to say.
Yeah.
People put a lot of time and effort to make things look effortless. Like a lot of these, like, I swear, like some of these Sea Point girlies who are like on the prom with their burnt and they're running and stuff. I'm like, it looks like they're just going for a run and having a matcha like everybody else. They're working hard. I know they're working hard because they're like the content looks polished. It looks super nice. They're on top of things, you know, and they're thinking about, you know, how to get that engagement, how to build that audience, and that's if everybody could do it, they would, and they're not, you know.
I mean, even you said it. Maybe you can also share your story how you did, because doing it. I mean, you said a bit off camera before how you did, but like 80 episodes plus of a podcast, doing your social media, doing multiple things.
19 episodes a week.
Yeah, I think for me, and it was quite interesting what you said. You know, I think one of the things that I've learned is that I have multiple passions and multiple things that I'm passionate about, and that like was great. It's been great to be able to like do all of this multiple things, but it hasn't. The big problem is that it's led me to a point where I have this kind of very fragmented life, and I don't. And it's like, you know, so that's also, I think, something that I've kind of learned as well, is that it's almost like, and it's hard because I guess it's like, you know, to say I love this passion more than I love another passion, but it's like you rather want to focus on one thing and do it really well than focus on multiple things and like, you know, like a little bit of here, a little bit there. I think that was the other thing I learned from the podcast as well, is that like, and that's why I'm now, you know, when I do my next season, is I'm going to be changing my format. Is like, I was just doing too much, as I said, in the trail space. And it was like, what is the one thing about the trail space, or what is the one thing in life that I'm really interested about? And I'm going to follow that rather than what I think people will, you know. And I think that's been like a process of just like, you know, figuring things out. But it's also like, that's just the nature of it. You know, it's like that asking yourself that question, you know, like if you won the lottery tomorrow, like what would you do with the rest of your life? You know, and it's like, what is the, if you won the lottery, but the condition of getting the money was that you could only do one thing for the rest of your life, but you had to work, you know, and like, so what would you kind of do? And I think that's kind of the, you know, finding that thing. And then also, you know, once you found that thing, it becomes very easy to create content. It becomes very easy to, you know, to work on it, to, you know, do things like that when it's, you know, when it's so natural. I think that's the important thing. That's when you're struggling to do content or create content, like then you're probably not doing the right thing. You know, if it's not coming to you naturally, you know, like if you can't turn on a camera at any moment and speak on that passion, you know, like, or someone comes up to you in the street and they're like, wants to interview you about that thing, you know, or someone phones you and says, hey, like, we're going to do this thing right now, and like it's 3:00 in the morning on a Saturday, like, do you go back to sleep, or do you actually wake up? And it's like, that's the thing, is like, once you find that thing, like, that is the thing that you should be doing. You know, you shouldn't be doing something that it's like, yeah, I enjoy it, you know, it's fun, but it's like, would you get out of bed in like the middle of the night and go do it? Would you, you know, like, if you could do nothing else, would you do that? You know, I think and I think that's a big thing, is that the biggest problem that I've faced with like what I've done is that I've had a problem of, I've needed to, and this is what he's saying, you know, I've needed to work a full-time job, but then also I had my passions.
Yeah.
And what I found was that my passions were not, I was not passionate enough about those passions that I would finish a full-time job and then go and work on the passions. So I think that has been like a big thing that I've realized, is like, if you don't finish a 5:00 job, or you don't finish at 5:00 after working a day in, I don't know, like in a factory, you know, or like cutting trees down or something, and you're tired and you're exhausted and you want just to go to bed instead of doing whatever you're passionate about, then you're not passionate about that thing. You know, like no matter how tired you are, no matter how exhausted you are, no matter how like, you know, no matter what's happened in your life, if you're not going to drop everything to go after that,
Yeah.
and you know, like you can be like, well, no, I need to spend time with my family, you know, or this or that. But it's like if you're not willing to spend like from Friday night to Sunday night working on your passion when you're not at work, you know, it's not something you're passionate about. And I think I'm finding for the first time now, I'm like, oh, this is what passion is, you know, because I'm like, no, I'm not coming, I'm not doing anything this weekend. I'm going to be at home just doing this thing that I love, you know.
Yeah.
That's I think when you find that moment, the problem is finding it. That's the big issue. Is and again, it comes easier to some people, but I would say, you know, pursue everything until you hit that spot. Like that's the most important thing. Is like, you know, like keep going until you find something that does that for you. I think it's so important. And with the talking about social media and brands, once you find that, the brands will find you. That's like the, you know, that's the, like I think also people think that, you know, that brands are, you know, like they're these foreign things that they're, you know, but like most of these brands have people that are literally spending every day on social media looking for people that they can work with or trends that they can, you know, jump on or things like that. So like it's, and I think a lot of people are like, oh, you know, like I'm not being contacted by any brands, you know, I'm not good enough, like that type of thing. But it's like then, you know, to change your story or change your passion or change, you know, like look at what you're doing. You know, it's not because someone else is better than you. You know, people, you know, think about like brand manager opens his social media and is like scrolling through like his explore page or whatever, you know, what's going to make him stop on your account?
Yeah.
You know, if it's just the same as everyone else's.
Tell us a little bit about, so Joe Blogs is a runner, okay? And he wants to upgrade his page so he can start getting sponsorship deals. Give us like a 1, 2, 3, like what would your like key things be for him?
Yeah. So I mean, I think for me it's like, what is, you know, like what is your thing? That's the thing. It's like, are you wanting to be a professional runner? You know, are you wanting to be a coach? Are you wanting, you know, I think that's also the problem is that like running is so massive. Like there's so many parts of that. So you need to find, and again, coming back to the thing, you need to find the thing that like, you know, take everything out of the equation. Like, don't be like, oh yeah, I want to do marathons because like everyone's like, that's where the trends are at the moment, you know? So like, don't even start with the social media. Be like, cool, I love running, but what do I love about running? Or what do I, you know, what is the one area of running? So start there.
Niche down even more.
You know, because also again, the thing I said about podcasts, it's the same as social media. You know, like if you can't think of your first 100 posts on social media, it's going to be a long slog for you to get anywhere with it, you know?
So be strategic, plan ahead, think about what you want to do.
Exactly. But just think of like, think of yourself personally, you know, think of like, you know, like, can you talk about this topic or can you, you know, like what excites you about running? What, you know, are you interested in races? Are you interested in like the behind the scenes? Are you interested in, you know, and then make that your thing. That's, you know, that would be number one, is to build that niche audience or that niche, you know, the thing that excites you within that. And then being able to go to a brand and say, like, if you go to a brand and you say, like, this is my unique angle and this is why you should work with me, as opposed to like, I've got 1 million followers and this is why you should work with me. I guarantee you, like, the brand's going to be a lot more interested in, you know, the unique thing. And I think the one thing for me is like, you know, is that the yes, brands are looking for people, but they're, you know, unless you're really got that like thing, you know, like, so don't be afraid to pitch things. Don't be afraid to like, I mean, I come up with ideas, like I come up with so many ideas and I just send them to brands, and I'm like, like I sent it to a brand, like I think like 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Like came up with a concept for my YDRun thing, and I pitched it to the brand. I was like, like take it or leave it. Is there something you'd be interested in? Let me know, And it's like, that's the kind of thing that you've just got to keep doing and keep doing. But don't go to a brand and say, these are my numbers. Like, this is what, like if you give me money, I'll post and I'll get you 1,000 views.
Right.
Because they can literally do that themselves.
Yeah.
Like they can hire a photographer, put paid media into it, and they'll get a million views, like, on a very limited budget.
Right.
So that's also a thing, is like, why would the brand want to work with you? And that's, it requires a lot more effort.
Yeah.
But it's like, what is your unique, proposition that you're kind of selling?
Yeah.
And you just got to keep selling it. That's the thing.
Do you think people should be pitching themselves more?
Yeah, but I think it's in a very specific way. Like, don't DM a brand and be like, hey, can we work together? Like, and also, like, I think also we've become so like used to the like trade exchange, like era type thing. Like, yeah, free clothes are cool, but it doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't pay the bills.
Yeah.
And you've got to start seeing yourself as a, like,
Professional.
if you want to do this professionally, and as you say, like, this stuff takes time.
Yeah.
Like, and that story of like, oh, we don't have budget and stuff, they have budget for the right things.
Right.
Like, that's the thing, is like, when someone says to you they don't have budget, it means they don't have budget for whatever you're selling.
So
like,
how would you go about pitching yourself to a brand? Like, would you send them an email? Would you say, this is my concept, this is what I want to do, and this is like what it would cost you? Is that kind of like the format? Or
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm just like, I don't really care about etiquette and stuff like that. It's probably like why I probably like, have probably lost a few clients or lost brands or things. But it's like, I would go on LinkedIn, find the brand manager, connect with them and start a conversation. If they don't connect with you, that's fine, or even, like, I mean, I've often done it where I literally just search a company on LinkedIn, find the cleaner, and I'm just like, hi, can you tell me who the marketing person is? And like, and give me their number,
That's a hack.
Like,
yeah, forget about all the tools where you have to pay money to
yeah,
find the
yeah,
right people. Just ask
it's
the
like,
cleaner.
do that, like, just like search the company on LinkedIn, find anyone, like find Cheryl in accounts and be like, hey, can you tell me who the marketing person is? Like, it's like, I've got a proposal, I want to send it to the marketing person. Can you give me the email or something like that,
Yeah.
There's also like, I guarantee you, not one brand that you want to work with monitors their own social media. Like, and that's also the problem. The other thing is, like, you've also got to, and I think this is the other thing that people also don't understand, is it does require a lot of investment. I think a brand's got to see, I wouldn't say your commitment, but they've got to see that you're passionate about, A, what you're doing, and B, about, how their brand would fit into, into their life. And I think that's also the important thing, is that social media, being an athlete, it's all the same. Like, you've got to spend money to make money. That's the thing, you've got to invest in yourself. So you can't kind of like sit and say, I want to be big on social media and have all these brands. Like, if you're not willing to kind of go put out the work, like target a brand and, show them what you could do for them. That's also the thing, is like, you've got to have that, you've got to believe in yourself and believe that putting money into something is going to get you that, because you believe in it so strongly. And I guess that comes back to like the podcast thing. It's like, like, it's a lot of money to do a podcast,
Yeah.
But like, do you believe in it like so strongly? Like, I actually heard a stat today that an episode of a podcast will reach its peak listener numbers 3 years after it's been released.
Actually.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So I said, like, you need to stick
So,
to it, just pump out
you know,
content,
so that's the thing. It's
consistency.
like, it's, you know, it's not something, you know, that, and brands look at that, you know, like, I don't want to sponsor a podcast that's, I don't want to give you like 6 months worth of budget and then like you're gone tomorrow, you know.
Yeah.
But and I don't think that means that you have to work for 3 years before you get a sponsor. It's just like show them, you know, that you're serious about this thing.
Yeah.
You know, like you're taking it seriously. You've got a concept, and you know, I think that's the important thing. Also, with social media is like invest in yourself. Like, you know, invest in, you know, get yourself a good phone or a good camera. You know, invest in the tools. You know, like get the CapCut subscriptions and things like that. You know, if this is what you want to do and you believe passionately in it, then that's what you've got to do. Unfortunately, you know, like it's like if you could just have instant overnight, and but then it goes back to your thing of like you can easily very much have like a viral hit, but it's not going to result in long-term success.
Right. Slow term growth over overnight success that disappears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean that's I guess the problem is a lot of people don't want to do that.
Yeah, I feel like also nowadays society, people just see only the shiny things. Especially I feel like Instagram more as than other platforms. It's always the highlight reel. And like you also said then, like people make it look easy and don't actually, it's so much hard work. Coming back to also speaking of people like you also putting in all that work. I feel like also people easily get discouraged. I mean, for how long are you doing it now?
15 years I've been doing social media. Yeah, I mean, I think that's also the thing is like, you know, like sometimes you do get lucky, but also, you know, like you've got to do something, you know, like day in. I mean, it's also always the funny thing with athletes where they're willing to put in the work in their running or whatever. And you're like, well, how are you getting better at running? It's like, okay, well, I'm doing it every day and I'm consistent.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with social media. It's like, you know, like just be consistent about it and, you know, like work harder than everyone else. And it's like, you'll kind of get there, you know? I think that's also the thing is like, and I don't think it's about that, you know, you have to do something 12 hours a day, every single day for the next 5 years to make yourself successful. I think you're only going to get lucky when you've kind of put in 12 hours. So you could do it for a month and you could hit gold. But it's like the fact that you're willing to put that in and people can see it and people can see that passion, that's then what kind of like leads to the success. But also just keeping your eyes open and like, you know, seeing what opportunities there are as well. You know, that's important. I think finding something that meets that, you know, I've been doing a lot of work on like trying to figure out this ikigai principle, you know, where it's like the 4 squares of, you know, like the one you got to find like the thing that you're passionate about and you can make money. Often we make money, but we're not passionate.
Yeah.
Or we're passionate, but we don't make money. No, we're passionate, we don't make money. We make money, we're not passionate,
and
you know?
what the world needs.
Yeah.
Also like this.
Yes. Yeah. You know, so it's like, you've got to find that, like that balance. And it's like, so what can I do that I'm actually good at? And as you say, like, what does the world need, you know, so that I can sell it?
Yeah.
So I think that's also an important thing to consider, you know, is there's a balance of those elements. It's not just about your passions. It's also about like, cool, these are my passions. Where are the gaps within these passions? Like I was saying with the running. So it's like, cool, I'm passionate about running. So I'm going to look in the running space and be like, here's a gap.
Yeah.
You know, or I'm passionate about this. And so you then like laser focus in there and see like, where's the gap in that space, you know? So it's like, where can I, and I mean, I guess you can start it either way. You can say like, what can I do really well? And then find the thing you're passionate about in that. Or you can say, okay, well, what am I really passionate about? Where can I find the gap, you know, that I can actually make money from this thing?
Yeah.
So I think that's also like something to try and consider. You know, it is hard, but it's an important exercise to go through. You know, like go through yourself personally. That like, where's that middle ground for you?
How have you been able to fund your podcast? You said you did 19 episodes in a week once, or
Yeah.
multiple times. I don't know.
Yeah.
How do you do you have a full-time job right now, or
So yeah, well, I'm a freelance social media. So I've got like a bunch of clients,
Okay.
and yeah. So I again got lucky with my podcast in the beginning. So my first season was sponsored by a food client that I had from my previous career, and then it kind of like, again, I just pitched things to brands, like this is the concept, and I managed to get 2 sponsors on board last year.
Oh wow, that's cool.
And like it was cool, but I think it was a kind of those things where I maybe got a bit lucky, and I maybe like I didn't fully understand what sponsoring a podcast meant, because it's a totally different thing to social media. So I think my mind, and I've obviously spent so much time in social media, that I was like, I'm pitching a podcast with the social media. So they were getting the benefit of the social media, and I was getting their money essentially, which got to a point where it was like, okay, like I want you to actually be interested in my podcast, not just my social media. But yeah, in terms of like how again, like I think I've told you guys, like I don't have the technical skills.
Yeah.
I don't own any cameras. I don't have a studio. So for me, the most efficient way to do it is to bulk, like do like as many as I can in one time, like book out a studio, for like 2 or 3 days, and just kind of get it done. Also because just life gets in the way.
Yeah.
Obviously the downside is that like like as things go, like things change and things pop up and stuff like that. But I think for me, that was kind of just like a cost efficient way. I still haven't figured out what is the best way to actually do a podcast, in terms of cost efficiency, and that's, I guess, the biggest problem is like, what are you offering in the sponsor? That's the problem at the end of the day. It's not really about numbers and things like that. It's like, like and that's why both my sponsors ended at the end of last year, because I don't feel like I know what value I can offer to them.
Yeah.
And it's like, it was kind of like like I got to a point where I was like, I just, like, I'm going to be honest, I'm not really sure what value this podcast is giving you, because it's like, I just don't know where the kind of the revenue potential is for them as a brand.
Yeah.
And I think that's also important, is to be kind of realistic about it, and find that kind of business model,
Yeah.
because that's you want someone who's going to sponsor you like long term.
Yeah.
But even more than that, and I think also like one of the biggest problems I had with sponsors was that it was, as I said, they were more interested in the social media than the actual podcast. So it was like there was no kind of interest in the in the actual podcast.
Yeah.
So you want someone who's going to be listening to your podcast, watching your podcast, giving you feedback, who's going to like bounce ideas off you, who's actually going to want to get involved in the podcast, as opposed to like, just give you the money and off you go.
I feel like you also said something really important here, which I feel like you can also translate to, let's say, the other social media platforms, which also comes back to authenticity and knowing who you are and what you stand for. Let's say you're quite new to this thing, you didn't figure this out, the brand reaches out to you, is willing to give you money for that type of video. They tell you should do it this way, you should do it this way. But because you didn't figure out what you're passionate about, what your style is, what your story is, you just do it in their way.
Yeah.
But it totally flops, doesn't resonate at all with your audience. And I feel like also putting in that work and just being not shy to say, no, this is not going to work the way because of this. If I would do it this way, my style, and like the audience will receive it much better, which in return will give you guys better success in that campaign. And I feel like it also comes back to the side of like, get the foundation right, figure out who you are, figure out what's your passion, what's your story. And I feel like if you have the foundation right, everything else will slowly start fall into place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think,
we haven't reached out to any sponsors yet because we're still like figuring it out. Also, our podcast is, getting
mm,
a good podcast will get like 300 and something views, and then a
mm,
bad one will do like 50 so far. It's only been like 5 weeks, but like
yeah.
that's kind of where we're sitting at. So yeah, if we pitch
Mm,
to a brand sponsor, I'm not sure what kind of
yeah.
value we're bringing to the table at this present moment. So
Mm.
it's a hard pitch, I suppose.
That's the most important thing, is like, it's not even about like the numbers and things like that. It's like, it's like, what would they benefit, even if it is like 50 people, what is the benefit for them? That is and unfortunate reality is like, and I saw this with social media as well, like, we're probably like 5 to 10 years behind kind of like Europe and America.
Yeah.
So in terms of podcasting, if you look at where brands are jumping on board, and America, it's like huge. So we're probably 5 to 10 years away from that. Maybe it'll be a bit less, like, but so that you also got to have that in mind where you're approaching a brand, like, yes, people are listening, but like, very few brands are actually getting it. And that's the other important thing, is like, and this is another piece of advice, is like, and the kind of diehard podcasters will hate me for this, but like, always go video first. Like, audio is important. Like, if you're a purist, like, I love audio, but I realized, and probably realized too late, is that like, the audio was for me and like the few purists who I have, but like, the video is the most important part, because that's where you're going to get your big numbers.
Yeah.
Like, again, it's like, and things, it's like, okay, cool. I get, like, as you say, like 200 to 300 listens on my audio podcasts, but it's like a 60-70% like through rate of people listening through the episode, versus like 5,000 views or 5 to 8,000 views on YouTube, where like people are hardly watching it. But if you go to a brand and you say, like, I've got 5,000 YouTube views versus I've got 200 Spotify views, but my through rate is much better, they'll be like, I don't care. Like, give me the bigger number.
Right.
So
yeah.
like YouTube, and obviously with the monetization as well, like, like, there is a route to monetization, like, without sponsors and without, like, and that YouTube is kind of like the only way. I obviously haven't got there yet, but I mean, it's probably not going to be massive, for most people, but at least it's something, like, especially if you can build that audience, So I think that's also something that's like important. I would say it's a bit more expensive, obviously, to do video, but like, the video is the way you're gonna, like, you're not gonna make money from an audio podcast only. Like, I think those days are gone.
Gone.
Yeah.
Speak a little bit more about the brand and us in South Africa being like a few years behind, because this is my big thing when I'm talking to other creators and influencers in Cape Town. Like, part of the reason I wanted to do this, I was like, I see other people doing it overseas, and I see it starting to happen in Cape Town and starting to happen in South Africa, and I'm like, cool, let's get on the bandwagon, like, at the beginning, and help other people like do the same thing. But I don't know if the brands are on it like they are overseas. And I was talking to Giannis before this podcast, and I was saying the big problem with like social media here is like, people don't know what's going on, like brand managers and stuff. So when you come to them with an idea, they're not sure, and because they're not sure, they're not sponsoring people, and because they're not sponsoring people, there's less content creators who have incentive to make great content, and then it's like kind of like a negative spiral where only some people are breaking out and like putting in the work first to make good content that brands actually want to reach out. But is there something to be said about trying to generate international audience, or is that too difficult here? Do the algorithms not push our content as much? Like, is that a actual factor, or is that just in our heads?
I mean, I think it's like, would an overseas audience, be interested in what you're doing or what you're, that's the thing. It's like, it's also, and that's, I guess, an interesting thing when I was reconsidering my podcast, it's exactly also where, like, my head was at. It's like, I don't know if an audience would be, but I'm at least going to give myself a shot in terms of making it, something that would interest both, South Africans and international audiences. But I think for me, like, like local, you're not going to attract international brands, like to work with you here. And, having the connection with an overseas audience, it's very difficult to do, to have that connection, as you say, with like the algorithms, with, who people are following. And, the problem isn't the people here, there isn't the audience. Like, audience is not a problem here. Like the brands are the problem. It's just that, like, we're a much smaller economy. Like, I think also a thing that most people don't understand is that a lot of the big brands here, especially in the kind of sporting fitness space, are not like HQ. It's like I work for one of my clients is like a big soccer manufacturing. They do a lot of the football jerseys, and it's literally I'm the only person in marketing. Like, and I do everything for them because they basically have the license for the brand in Africa. And if you look at the brand on a global level, you're like, whoa, these people must have like 1,000 people in like a massive office in like somewhere in South Africa. And it's literally just me, And I think that's the sad reality, is that a lot of fitness brands, or a lot of the brands in the space, are either small startups, or they're the local unicorns that, like, there are a few of them. And then they're kind of the big international brands. I think, as far as I know, like, Adidas is probably the only one that's like properly represented in South Africa.
Yeah.
Like, it's and a lot of the other brands are like very, very small. If they're, like part of the company, they're very small. Otherwise, like, a lot of people are just bringing brands in, like a lot of people are just going to brands overseas and being like, hey, there's a market in South Africa. Yeah. I think you can do it. I think we can do it. And like, these people are okay, like, well, I don't have nothing to lose. Like, I don't really know anything about South Africa, but like, here you go.
Yeah.
And then you see this big international brand, you're like, whoa, like, these oaks must have money. And you're like talking to like one guy, who's got the rights to sell that product in South Africa. Right. So that's also a problem, is like, is that's the problem we face as well and with that problem as well, it's like, it's not only a money problem, it's a resource problem.
Yeah.
Where like, no one's gonna, like, they basically just gonna work with the same people who they know they can trust and who can deliver, like, on their budget. So that becomes a tricky thing. And I don't know how, we kind of break out of that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's and I've never gone down this route of, trying to either monetize the audience or, going into like the merch space or the event space or like things like that, that don't require sponsorship, which is definitely an interesting angle. And I think, again, if you find, a unique concept or something like that, like, and you have the resources, like, that could work. But it's that outlay of, you're going to have to outlay some capital in order to do that.
But I feel like, actually, even when you take Europeans or like overseas America, I mean, most successful creators, even with a smaller audience that actually make a living out of it, they actually don't rely necessarily on sponsorships. Like you said, they build an audience of like that have a buying intent, or you actually offer them a solution, or like you host events, and then actually you directly sell to the audience, which can also be often more than not even a more fulfilling way, because you control the product, you control the service, and you can actually make sure that you give proper value to the audience and not directly basically being a billboard. But I feel like we could talk for hours and hours and hours, continue down this road. We definitely have to have you on the podcast again. That would be super lovely. But
amazing.
We do also have like a really cool segment towards the end, which is a quick fire segment.
We got a quick fire speed questions. Can I ask you $1 million question before we do the speed questions? Based off of what you said, do you think, because we're trying to figure out how people can make a living off of this, and what I'm scared of is that we figure out that it's way harder and almost impossible for us to do what they're doing overseas, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a time thing or if it's a like it's going to become possible, or if it's just like, hey, the economy's just not what Europe and America is. It's not going to happen here. Big $1 million question. Is it doom and gloom for South African social media, or do you think there's possibility for...
No, I mean, I think, again, and it's probably the theme of the episode, is that like people see the passion. So it's like, if you are like, I'm going to do this thing regardless of whether I'm making money from it or I'm, you know, like, this is the thing I'm passionate about, I believe in it, like, you will get somewhere. Like, and I think that's what, like, I've definitely seen, you know, like, things move a lot quicker when, you know, when you have that passion, when people can see, you know, when people can see, like, okay, cool, this guy's like serious about this thing, like, you're like, cool, I want to follow that journey, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think also we think the audience is like a lot more stupid than they are, you know, like we think that like people can't see through like what, you know, like people are like, oh, they're going to think it's genuine.
Yeah.
Like people, you can pick that up so easily, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, even just the intent and the, you know, that's what I said, like, you've got to be like, okay, cool, it's a 5-year plan. I'm going to work 12 hours a day for the next 5 years. But it could happen in a month if people see, you know, like, this is really cool. Like, I want to get on board with this because like this guy is genuinely excited about it, you know?
Okay.
So I think that's the most important thing, that I think, you know, like, ignore the money, ignore the, you know, like, find something you're passionate about and just do it.
Yeah.
And like, things will, like, I mean, it's happened to me where, you know, I've tried to follow the money and that hasn't worked, and gone the other way, and it seems to be starting to work. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Goosebumps.
Yeah.
Epic. All right, we got a quick fire questions. Road or trail?
Trail, 100%.
Have to say that.
No, but like literally, like, don't even make me run on the road. Like,
Okay.
yeah.
Uphill or downhill?
I actually prefer uphill. Like, I enjoy. I find anyone can run downhill. Like, you just kind of let yourself go. But uphill's the challenge, and I think like I think I can, you know, I can go for a long time up a hill and at a slow speed rather than like speeding downhill. So yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Solo run or group run?
Oh, this is a controversial one. Like, for a long time I was very into my solo running, but like I'm discovering group running and the fun of it. I'm still new to it this year, so it's I think both have their place.
Okay.
Like, yeah, but I would say group run at the moment.
Group run at the moment. Okay. Racing or adventure days?
Adventure days all the time. Like, yeah, like I think once you get to a point where you realize you're not going to be competitive, then I think it's like, you know, it's all about that, and especially on the trails, you know, like, I think, yeah, races have become overhyped.
Okay. UTCT or backyard ultra?
Sure, that's a hard one. I think backyard ultra, actually, I'm thinking of doing it this year. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because I think for me, it's like I'm coming back from injury now, so it's like also it's like something which I can do, you know, which I don't really know where my fitness is, and it's something where I can do, like, you know, I can try and go as far as I want, whereas I don't really think I'm ready to commit to a UTCT at this moment.
But do you have a lap goal in mind?
No.
No.
But like, yeah, I mean, I'm quite. I think every year I haven't been able to do it, so I think this year I'm gonna maybe give it a try.
Epic.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Watch the watch or run by feel?
It's also a difficult one. Like, I want to say run by feel, but like I'm a huge watcher. Like,
Okay.
it's like, yeah, but I think if you can learn to run by feel, like,
Yeah.
it's so important, like, to listen to your body.
Yeah. I used to run by feel when I was just starting out. My grandpa's a runner, and he's done like comrades and every marathon you can think, and he got me into running when I was like 12.
Yeah.
And back then, like, you'd have like a stopwatch maybe, and I didn't have one, so I used to run by feel like most of the time. But it got to the point where I was like, I know exactly what pace I'm running, and I would
Yeah.
finish within like a few seconds of what I thought I was going to
Yeah.
do, which was like pretty cool. And it's like a cool skill that I've kind of lost now with like, you know, the watches.
Yeah.
But every now and again, I'm like, I won't look at my watch for a while and I'm like, I remember the good old
Such an
days.
important skill to have.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. It's
No, it
like,
is, especially with trail running, because
Yeah.
you're, you know, like you've got to be able to listen to your body. Like that's the, you know, like you've got to like, do you need water? Do you need electrolytes? Do you need food? Like, is this a hunger? Is this a like, no, like, is this a sickness? Is this, you know, like, what is this actually? The watch is not going to tell you that.
yeah.
Unless you have some seriously fancy watch.
Yeah.
Like,
You are dehydrated.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
I bet you that's coming
Yeah,
soon.
I
Like
mean,
Garmin's working on that
yeah,
right now. You know?
like, that would be amazing.
All right. Early morning run or sunset run?
Oh no, sunset. Like, don't even get me out. Like, yeah, like I have no energy in the morning. So like sunset is 100%.
100%. Okay. Music or nature sounds?
No, nature. I mean, I think I've never actually really been a music listener, but like I guess if I was more of a road runner, I'd probably listen to music. But geez, when you're out there on the trails, there's no need for music.
One thing road runners don't understand about trail runners.
I mean, I think like you were saying, you know, it's not all about like being really hard and being like, you know, we're gonna go do 100 Ks, and I think the minority of people are like that. I think most people, you know, it's just about the adventure, and I think that's what gets lost, is that people get so scared of the trails, or like it looks so scary, and it's like a trail run is literally go find a park and run around the park. That's a trail run.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, that's just get off the road and you're doing a trail run. So, you know, and you can do it, and it's amazing.
That's cool. All right. Final question. Finish this sentence. I run because.
Jeez, this is also one that I've been exploring, but at the moment it's actually because of the community. But a lot for the first 4 years was I ran for myself a lot, and my goals, and I found that it was the one thing which I could like set those goals and actually achieve them, whereas everything else in my life was like a bit, you know, all over the place because I have so many things going on. But running was the thing where you could be like, cool, finish, I'm going to do this race, you finish the race, goal ticked. But now it's very much like the community is amazing. Like the stories, the inspiration, just the vibes. It's incredible. Sounds cliche, but it's amazing.
It's good. It's good.
beautiful.
Epic.
Yeah.
That's
And
beautiful.
one last thing before we leave. Where can people follow you? Where can they follow your journey, your podcast? Please plug everything where people can find you.
So I have a personal account, which is my name, Dean Horwitz _. The Trail Chasers podcast is all over the place. Trail Chasers Pod on Instagram. But where I'm most active at the moment is hopefully I get this right, YDRun, obviously with Instagram's like naming policies and everything. But yeah, that's my big project. I'm hoping to get to 1,000 people interviewed this year. So I mean, and I'll decide at the end of the year whether I'm going to include the 365 people I've done before. So if we include that, I'm on about 450. If we don't include that, I'm on about 150. So yeah, so it's going to be a journey this year. Like I've got 900 or maybe 600-700 to go. So
Okay.
it's going to be
That's epic.
It's going to be in person.
Sheesh.
Yeah.
In person.
That's a
yeah.
lot. Big
So, yeah,
goals.
like that's also like another thing is like I want to do it. That's why I'm unsure about whether I'm going to include the first 365. But yeah, I want to do 1,000 people in person, hopefully around South Africa. But yeah, that's the goal for the year.
Epic. Thanks so much
Amazing.
for coming on. We really
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
it.
I'm excited to see where you guys go with this.
Thank you so
Cheers,
much.
Dean. It was
Amazing.
so amazing.
Thank
Awesome.
you.